This is Glazed and Confused, which shows the work of 23 amazing artists who came to the residency at the ceramic design studio Guy TAFE. I invited artists mainly to do the residency that had no or little ceramic background. The whole idea was sort of to create an atmosphere of innovation and collaboration, and it was just done in a very instinctual and kind of passionate way, the whole show. So in some ways it's going to be interesting to see what is revealed.
In my practice, I tend to start everything with drawing, and from that I then make paintings and I make sculpture and prints. And I work at university and I teach painting and drawing at university, and I'm sort of, for me to come home after a day, hours drive, walk into the ceramic studio, and Lynda's such a great personality, very kind of calm. She'd give me some porcelain clay and I'd make these slab things or coil pots, and it was great being in with the students because I could see what the students would do and then completely destroy some of the techniques that they would do. So I'd see these people making beautiful bowls, then I'd try and make a bowl and it wouldn't work, and I ended up throwing it on the floor. And so the things that I threw on the floor I ended up using as a strategy to make things. I think they're great as groups. They have a little kind of conversation with each other.
I've been combining materials that have a different relationship with time. So I usually work with the moving image, painting, plants, live plant material. I've discovered burnouts from doing the residency, where you burn out the object, so it's about the process of kind of letting go. You kind of sacrifice an object to have this form of ceramics or porcelain at the end. Through this kind of very intense process of making and then firing, it's such a high temperature that nothing else will kind of last. Everything burns away except for this really strong, essence of the clay that remains, and that takes quite a long period of time compared to something like film or painting, where it's much more immediate. You have a result of something that's very still and stable and in opposition to what it was originally. So there's a really nice dialogue between the before and after, and to me that's really interesting.
Predominantly I work in painting, but that extends out into things like wall painting, painting with performance, but it always has been grounded in 2D imagery. I really wanted to just see what came out of, clay, working with clay in my hands, seeing that how I could maybe turn things that almost seem quite flat in my paintings into 3D imagery. Funnily enough, I have ended up making quite slab-based works, which are flat anyway. I've really had to learn to be patient with working with clay. It's about, colours that go on one colour and come out another. It's about the chance or the inevitable chance that something may crack and you might make 10 but only end up with 5 works. So the idea of patience and the unknown has been something that I've really had to take into account when working in this way.
In my previous work, I worked a lot with video, and I was interested in how I could use the video camera as a medium and simultaneously as a medium and as a documentative tool. During the residency, I developed a new project called Sealed Earth. It's a year-long project, and in the exhibition I'm showing the first 4 months. What I do is every day I seal clay within my hand. This is a really simple, repetitive action, and the nature of repetition is that you're intending to create something identical to what came before it, but you'll always end up with difference. It's in the differences that you can see this index of the body moving through time, so every difference shows that it was made at a different point in time.
We didn't actually really use clay traditionally in the process of undertaking the residency together. In fact, what we were more interested in was the actual processes involved in ceramics, so ideas of collecting objects, melting, the chemistry of different materials, Essentially what we did was we built ceramic, I guess you'd call them ceramic trays, which we then filled with different sorts of foraged materials, so crushed glass, feldspar and other sort of geological materials.
Different metals and, yeah.
And we performed these big melt experiments in the kiln. We photographed them at close range and then essentially use that process to create digital collages and, I suppose, non-objects.
The roots of my practice are based in drawing and also observing the performative aspect of painting within the studio. Christopher Dolman and myself have been friends for a long time. This work is an arrangement of ceramic objects that are based in everyday life, from the studio environment to the domestic, and is a kind of a look back at our sort of joint youth, I suppose. So there are objects from youth culture as well as popular culture.
I've been working on a video about colonisation, which is what I normally do. The colonials are taking the trees out of the landscape with the Indigenous people still on them and putting them into vases. And so it was actually quite a natural step to start to make vessels to put those trees in. This time we just glazed all of it in crackle goldine. That's suggestive of something very important that the colonials hold in high regard. Without realising what they've just done, which is just ripped everything out without any concern.
When I was invited to do the residency, I was incredibly excited because the object side of my practice had been shelved for a few years while I was concentrating on making performances. And so conceptually, one of the ways I went about this was to reflect on a personal obsession I have with vintage glass and vintage Japanese ceramic animals. The ceramics and the glass have such a personal value to me. They remind me of my grandmother, she's now deceased. They remind me of my childhood. They have such intrinsic value in my everyday that the works have become a conversation about value.
I think it's kind of drawn me closer to the notion of making again and craft. And I see it as making little models of ideas or models of sets that would come into my performative work. My work is often kind of looking at the community and relying on the community to direct and to complete my work and to give it real meaning. I've been really interested in the community of Munchkins. The community of Munchkins as a fictional community. My favourite film is The Wizard of Oz, and it's a recurring work in my own practice, and it's kind of become a symbolic language in my work. And when I went to America, I was lucky enough to meet Betty Ann Bruno, who is in her 80s and teaching the hula, and Betty Ann played a Munchkin. So I was able to meet with her and learn the hula, and it was a really very meaningful interaction for me. It was great.
I'm a painter, so I usually paint on marine ply with acrylics, and I do a bit of wooden sculpture as well. My work is of Masters of the Universe from 1984, a TV show that I used to watch as a kid, and I've made Castle Grayskull, He-Man and Skeletor, which are on top of a chest of drawers to look like my childhood bedroom, kind of. On the wall is a painting of the figures that are actually there, so it's a kind of a Inception sort of thing. There's painting inside a painting inside a painting.
A lot of my work is character driven, so a lot of it is about personalities. So when I started ceramics, it gave me this opportunity to be very loose with the work, so it was much more emotionally driven and a lot more in a sort of state of intuition. And my paintings are very detailed, like highly decorative, decorative on decorative on decorative. So when I could sort of bring that into ceramics, I found just the experience very, very risky, which was really nice because I'd gotten to a point with my paintings where I knew how to control them. But with ceramics, you can't. Sometimes the clay will make it will make its own decision on where it wants to pull and take itself. So, and then glazing too. Not having to fill in colour and just giving it over to some sort of like science or alchemy.
As a curator, I was always more interested in artists, sometimes more than I was interested in artworks, and I just think it's the same thing. So the thing that appealed to me about the residency was the social aspect as much as anything else. The Guy Meyer residency gave me the opportunity to use one piece of equipment in particular that I really wanted to get my hands on, which was the big, large extruders. Ceramics is so scatological, and the extruder is like a sort of bow inside the studio, which is sort of extrudes these handles that are quite often attached to very traditional forms, and I actually thought, why not just skip the form and just use the handle? One of the works in the show is a multi-handle posset cup. Posset is a type of drink that was drunk in social gatherings, and people would drink it from the cup. It's almost like a large punch bowl. By accident, I made a pot with one of the students where one of my pieces actually fell in the kiln and attached to theirs, which is I've incorporated into the work because it actually encapsulates a lot of how I felt about the residency.
My practice is normally painting. It was unusual. It was kind of nerve-wracking at first to work in clay because as a student at art school, I'd been told by my sculpture teacher that I couldn't think in 3D. The forms that I've made are based on a Greek archive, so they're quite traditional, but the materials, being terracotta, being over-fired, the work looks burnt and old as if it's just been exhumed from an archaeological dig. I now sort of manifest making work through clay first, so I can consider things spatially before I actually put them on canvas, so it's had a big impact on the way that I paint. I felt vindicated. I felt like, yes, actually this is something that I wish I'd done years ago. It's amazing how one teacher can change your entire approach.
The materials I used for this work were an audio description of an existing ceramic piece that I owned, and then had the community of students and staff recreate that work from that description. The idea of this work came about where a blind friend told me that she needs to hear the description of an object 3 times to understand it, just to have 3 different perspectives of one object to kind of really get an understanding of that object. I'm trying to recreate the object verbally, and it's a tool that's often used as an access tool for people that are blind and vision impaired in galleries, and it's something that I have a lot of experience in. So I was really interested in reversing that process where people are able to recreate an object from the description. I was surprised by the generosity of the students and the staff to have 18, and some of them even sort of took the project as a launch pad for their own bodies of work. Was really exciting, and that's a really nice surprise and tangent to the project.
It's just one big experiment, really, that I felt I just wanted to follow with, and just to sort of invite these amazing artists to the ceramic studio at Guy Meyer TAFE and just see what happens. Just give them clay and see what comes of it. And I think that's why I called it Glazed and Confused, because it was just sort of like this very passionate thing that evolved. It was just fantastic. There was this great energy that just filled the room when these artists were around.